The graduation address gives us the opportunity to hear from a distinguished member of our alumni community, and we're very fortunate today the address will be delivered by Dr. Lachlan Strahan. Dr. Strahan is the first Assistant Secretary at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. During his career, he has worked on various projects including the policy with Russia and China on chemical and biological weapons, and coordinating Australia's security and safety response during the 2010 Delhi Commonwealth Games. He played a key leadership role in Australia's successful campaign to an election to the Human Rights Council for the 2018 to 2020 term. Dr. Strahan most recently has completed an assignment in Geneva, managing Australia's first session as a member of the Human Rights Council. Dr. Strahan also worked at the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, where he played a central role in developing a major counter-terrorism package in the wake of ISIL's capture of Mosul in northern Iraq, and coordinating the initial stage of the search for the missing Malaysia Airlines flight MH370. I now have much pleasure in inviting Dr. Lachlan Strahan to deliver the graduation address.
Vice-Chancellor Mr. Shane Buggle, Provost and Senior Vice President Professor Mark Palange, Dean of the Faculty of Arts, my good friend Professor Sharon Pickering, members of the faculty, ladies and gentlemen, but most of all especially our new graduates. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight to tell you why this institution has played such a crucial role in my life and my career. And it's much better to be here than to be sitting at the MCG on Sunday in the rain watching my team lose by 109 points. In telling you my story, I want to take you back 15 years ago to a strange place at a very difficult time. On the 14th of January 2003, I was standing on a gloomy afternoon in the middle of Kim Il-sung Square in Pyongyang. Unveiled in 1954, a year after the Korean War had ended, this square is massive. 75,000 square metres of stone and concrete. It was midwinter, -15 still air temperature, with a vicious wind skating off the frozen Taedong River across the square and right through me, despite my thermal clothing. I looked around with grim fascination. Enormous garish propaganda banners covered the grandiose buildings around the square. The founder of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Kim Il-sung, the eternal president who had died in 1994, stared down at me from a gigantic portrait with a benign gaze which was both utterly fake and really creepy. The Juche Tower, a granite symbol of North Korea's weird indigenous communist ideology, soared 170 metres high on the other side of the river, its red flame glowing when most of Pyongyang was without light in the fading afternoon. This vast square was eerily empty, but it had been packed 11 days earlier when Kim Jong-il, the so-called dear leader, the second generation in a truly unique communist family dynasty, had presided over what was called the Million Man Parade to mark the 55th anniversary of the DPRK. Less than 2 weeks later, all these grand edifices, so clean and well tended, couldn't hide the cruelty and desolation lurking just behind the facade. Former Foreign Minister Gareth Evans once captured this distinctive strangeness so well when he described North Korea as the Truman Show meets Joseph Stalin. What on earth was I doing in Pyongyang? North Korea had left the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty only 4 days ago on the 10th of January. I was part of a team of officials from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade who've been sent to North Korea to urge the government to give up its nuclear weapons. As you can see, we clearly succeeded. A day after landing, my 4 DFAC colleagues and I were sitting in an ornate meeting room with Paek Nam-sun, the Foreign Minister. The head of our delegation presented our thoroughly reasonable and completely worded pitch Pale, largely immobile, and ill with a kidney disease, Peck delivered his implacable talking points, all approved by the dear leader, in a deathly monotone. A flamboyant interpreter added the colour with ludicrous, even comical hand gestures, and almost shouted that the American imperialists were trying to stifle the DPRK. We unsurprisingly failed to change any minds in Pyongyang. The North Korean nuclear problem is still the cause of global tension 15 years later. We are all now waiting to see if Kim Jong-un, the third generation in this dynasty, is ready to do a deal to alter the DPRK's course. So, I was in Pyongyang because I was the councillor running the political section in the Australian Embassy in Seoul. I spent most of my waking hours at that time trying to decipher North Korea. I had joined DFAT as a graduate trainee in 1993. As a sidebar, I'd note that one of my colleagues in our graduate group of 24 was an architect, and he's now our Consul General in Chengdu. But I was also in Pyongyang because my BA at the University of Melbourne, and then my PhD here at Monash University, had done so much to prepare me for that journey into North Korea's dark heart. Indeed, my studies in political science and history gave me the skills and the mindset to make the most of what is now a 25-year career in our foreign service. A liberal arts education teaches you how to think critically, creatively, and hard-headedly about complex and at times seemingly intractable problems. It teaches you how to be adaptable and resilient. In a testing international environment, a diplomat needs these qualities in spades. You have to be mentally nimble, breaking problems down into their constituent parts and approaching issues from different angles. The core of the liberal arts, curiosity about what makes human beings tick, what defines different cultures and countries, and what shapes issues over time, is essential. You have to be outward-looking, engaged, and bold. You have to be good at asking the right questions, being aware of your own preconceptions and really listening to the answers. In a social media-obsessed world where attention spans seem to be collapsing, many people have forgotten how to listen. They have become obsessed with the ephemeral and the unimportant. Listening takes time and patience. I learnt a lot about asking the right questions and listening carefully when I conducted scores of interviews for my PhD. An effective diplomat must be adept at creating a rapport with other people, often from quite unfamiliar cultures and sometimes representing governments with different objectives to our own. And occasionally that's an understatement. It's about both persuading and influencing other people and gathering information to drive well-informed, robust policies. Just like writing a convincing thesis, effective public policy must be based on cogent thought, hard-won evidence, and balanced judgment. You have to be simultaneously passionate about what you're striving to achieve and dispassionate in evaluating the issues in getting there. Given the volume and the diversity of the work which DFAT handles, a capable DFAT employee has to be skilled at assimilating large bodies of information, sometimes about unfamiliar and technical topics, frequently under pressure. And you do all of this to advance Australia's national interests. If it isn't about that, you shouldn't be doing it. My BA and then my PhD nurtured all of those skills, that way of looking at, understanding, and interacting with the world. But they gave me still more, qualities which go to the heart of doing the job of a diplomat well. They taught me to cherish what I see as humanist values like social justice, tolerance, equality for all, egalitarianism, democracy, and inclusivity, treating other people with respect and decency, whatever their position in society, whatever their culture, faith, or country of origin. For me, these values have a distinct Australian spin. They say something about our national character. So finally, a good Australian diplomat has to have a strong sense of Australianness. This doesn't mean having a my country right or wrong attitude, or seeing our national identity in uncomplicated, monocultural or static terms, but you have to have a strong sense of being Australian, of what defines us as a society and a culture, and where we stand globally in political, economic, cultural and strategic terms. I needed many of those qualities during my 6 days in Pyongyang in 2003. I was certainly encountering a wicked problem, North Korea's nuclear ambitions, a very different and closed culture, and a physically and psychologically stressful environment. Believe you me, you know you are under acute pressure when you realise the enormous mirror covering an entire wall of your hotel room is in fact a one-way mirror with a bunch of North Korean intelligence agents on the other side watching you 24/7. I thought, good luck to them. If they want to see me sleeping, then fill your boots. I found good reason to draw on these qualities and skills across my career. My PhD examined Australian perceptions of China from the 1930s to the 1990s. It armed me with critical knowledge which informed my 3 stints working on China. First in 1993 at the Australia-China Council, again in 1999 to 2000 when I ran the China bilateral section, and finally in 2005-2006 when I led the China economic team. My ability to assimilate tremendously complicated technical information was put to the test during my first diplomatic posting in Bonn in Germany, when I was a member of Australia's climate change delegation in the lead up to the Kyoto conference in 1997. I had to come to grips with some hellishly complex scientific and economic issues. I used all those listening and relationship building skills to develop a close rapport with German officials. One of them gave me particularly useful insights into what was driving Germany's climate policies. That was an important win, but I also learnt another harsh lesson about information. It's really bad when someone leaks your classified cable to the Sydney Morning Herald, almost destroying the career of your key contact and making you a marked man for all German officials. I had to master another complex set of technical issues when I became the head of our chemical and biological weapons section in the early 2000s. As a non-scientist, I developed an understanding of how these hideous weapons work, of how one piece of equipment can be used to freeze-dry coffee, and with some modifications, anthrax. I used this knowledge to chair a meeting of experts from over 30 countries in Paris in October 2001 to hammer out practical ways of tightening our collective controls on the export of such dangerous dual-use goods. This meeting was particularly fraught because it occurred after the anthrax letter attacks in the United States. My cultural literacy skills were tested when I was our Deputy High Commissioner in New Delhi. In 2012-2013, I led a team of superb cultural experts and festival managers to stage Ozfest, Australia's largest ever cultural promotion in India. Ozfest came at an important and delicate time. The incidents involving Indian students in Australian cities, a stalemate about uranium sales, and some ugly stouches on the cricket field, yes, we keep doing this, had affected our national image. We staged events across India, drawing on a diverse range of cultural practice to demonstrate that Australia is a dynamic, sophisticated, diverse and open country. We were carrying plenty of risk. India is a complex and testing operating environment. We had to choose content which would be convincing and appropriate in a country which is rapidly changing but still often culturally conservative. I've got to say that my heart was in my mouth when some stand-up comedians from the Melbourne International Comedy Festival did some gobsmackingly risque routines with lots of arm movement at a Delhi nightclub. Thankfully, we had judged our audience well. Delhi's young, culturally outwardly looking punters were ready for a few outrageous jokes. Gautier did our final concert at the same venue a few weeks later and brought the house down. My liberal arts education didn't let me down when I went to work in the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet between 2013 and 2015. PM&C plays the pivotal coordinating role in the federal government. When complex and unexpected problems reach across the boundaries between what we call line agencies, Prime Minister and Cabinet steps in. I ended up at the heart of just such a challenge in March 2014, when Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 vanished into the remote, cold waters of the southern Indian Ocean. For some weeks during the initial stage of the search, I coordinated a high-level committee which drew together civilian and military agencies to find the aircraft. The task was daunting. We were looking, in fact, for a needle in a haystack, and we didn't know where the haystack was. Most of the sea floor in this part of the Indian Ocean was still entirely unmapped. In fact, we knew more about the surface of the moon. All of my relationship building and listening skills were stretched when I had to coordinate and sometimes deconflict the activities of specialised agencies, often led by more experienced and senior people than myself. It also meant working with the representatives of 10 other countries, including Malaysia, the owners of the aircraft, and China, which had lost 152 of its own citizens in the incident. I again learnt new things, including that sound doesn't travel through water in straight lines, but bends in odd ways. Sadly, only 3 weeks ago, the latest phase of the search for that aircraft failed. I'll end with one final experience which captures the unique strengths of a liberal arts education. I've just returned from a 3-month stint as our acting ambassador at our UN mission in Geneva. I led Australia's delegation in March during our first session as a member of the Human Rights Council. This session ran for 4 packed, tense weeks. The negotiations behind the scenes, before everyone walked into the council chamber, were often very tough. Australia proved again that it's a committed, hard-headed and practical defender of human rights. This was very much about upholding in clear and strong language some of the values which I mentioned earlier: defending freedom of expression, championing equality for all, including LGBTI people, advocating the sexual and reproductive health rights for women and girls around the globe, and condemning often egregious human rights abuses. As you all contemplate the next steps in your own careers, be audacious. The problem-solving, critical thinking, communication skills which you have developed here are vital in today's knowledge economy. At a time when the world is facing an information overload, where the challenges confronting us seem to be becoming even more complex, people with the ability to see through the thicket of clamouring detail, to find a way forward, to decipher what makes the world tick are even more important. I'm grateful that the excellent education which I received at Monash, under the gentle but rigorous guiding hands of some very fine academics, prepared me so well for a professional life in public policy, in my case in the field of dealing with a big, complicated, challenging and sometimes frustrating world. It's never been dull.